The Talon's Edge was a warship, not a daycare center. Talia Ven reminded herself of this fact approximately 17 times per shift, and it was only 0900 hours. She stood in the mess hall, vanilla icing dripping from her auburn hair onto her maintenance jumpsuit, while 6 predator cubs, each the size of a large dog and possessed of retractable claws that could shred Durasteel, stared up at her with what she could only describe as guilty glee. At the front of the pack sat Cub Oric, his triforked tongue flicking out to taste the air, his scaled snout still covered in blue frosting. "Explain," Talia said, her voice carrying that particular tone of dangerous calm that every species in the galaxy seemed to instinctively recognize. The industrial mixer, designed to prepare meals for a crew of 300, lay on its side. The 20-gallon bowl had shattered. Icing vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, and something that might have been mint-coated every surface within a 15-foot radius. One cub had somehow gotten icing inside his ear canal. Oric chirped something in the clicking language of the Kreshtar, his bioluminescent spots flashing in a pattern Talia had learned meant either sorry or that was awesome, depending on the context. You know what? Talia scraped a handful of icing from her hair and flicked it into the disposal unit. I don't even want to know how you turned it on. That thing requires a 6-digit code and a biometric scan. She'd been aboard the Talon's Edge for 8 months now, the only human among a crew of apex predators from a dozen worlds. The Kreshtar, the Valdim, the Horath, all of them descended from species that had clawed their way to the top of their respective food chains through fang, venom, or sheer ferocity. And then there were the cubs. When the ship had rescued a civilian transport 3 weeks ago, they'd found it carrying families fleeing a colony collapse. 23 cubs of various species, all of them too young to be placed in the military creches, all of them needing somewhere to stay until the ship reached the nearest station. The captain, a Kreshtar named Sareth who could bite through a blast door, had taken one look at the situation and assigned them to Talia. "You're small," he'd said, his 3 rows of teeth gleaming. "Non-threatening? Mammals care for young. You'll manage." Talia had wanted to point out that being human didn't automatically make her a babysitter, but Sareth had already walked away, his tail scything through the air with the finality of a closing airlock. Now, as she surveyed the wreckage of the mess hall, she understood why the other crew members had been avoiding this section of the ship. "All right," she said, hands on her hips. "Clean-up time. Oric, you're on." The ship lurched. Talia grabbed the nearest table as the gravity compensators struggled to adjust. Red emergency lighting flooded the mess hall, and the intercom crackled to life. "Battle stations, we have incoming hostiles, unknown configuration. All non-essential personnel to emergency shelters." "Repeat, all non-essential," the cubs panicked. Their play-hunting instincts, so carefully controlled during peacetime, surged to the surface. They scattered in 6 different directions, screeching and hissing, their juvenile claws extended, their eyes wide with fear. All except Oric, the smallest cub, sat perfectly still, his gaze locked on Talia's face. She'd seen that look before in the eyes of the adult crew members when they watched her work. It was the look of a predator watching something that shouldn't survive. Something soft and weak and somehow still functioning in a universe designed to tear it apart. It was the look that asked, "How are you still alive?" Talia took a breath. Then she smiled. "Okay, cubs," she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Here's the thing about humans. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We don't have claws or venom or armor." The ship shuddered again. Somewhere in the distance, weapons fire echoed through the hull. "But we're really, really good at not dying, and you know what? We're even better at keeping our friends alive." She pointed at the overturned mixer. "Oric, you figured out how to turn that thing on, right? Which means you're clever." "I need clever right now." The cub's spots pulsed with pride. "Round up the others. Get them into the storage closet, the one with the reinforced door. I'm going to seal you in, and I'm going to make sure nothing gets through that door. Understand?" For a moment she thought he might refuse. But then Oric chirped a command, and the other cubs froze mid-panic. Within seconds, they were moving as a unit, following him toward the storage closet. Talia worked fast. She sealed the door with her engineering credentials, then rerouted power from the mess hall systems to reinforce the closet's shielding. It wouldn't stop a direct hit, but it would protect them from decompression and most weapons fire. The battle raged for 14 minutes. 14 minutes of watching the ceiling groan, of feeling the deck plates vibrate with each impact, of wondering if the next hit would breach the hull. When the all-clear finally sounded, Talia's hands were shaking. The storage closet door hissed open. 6 pairs of eyes blinked up at her scared, yes, but also curious. See? Talia said, forcing her voice steady. Not dead. That's the human specialty. Oric emerged first, moving slowly. He approached Talia, tilted his head, and then did something she'd never seen a Kreshtar cub do before. He pressed his snout against her leg, a gesture of trust, of pack bonding. The other cubs followed suit. Captain Sareth found them like that an hour later. Talia sitting on the floor of the destroyed mess hall, covered in icing and surrounded by predator cubs, teaching them a human children's song about stars. You survived, the captain observed. We're good at that, Talia replied. Sareth's expression was unreadable. Then his throat rumbled the Kreshtar equivalent of a laugh. Perhaps, he said, mammals do understand cubs better than I thought. 3 days later, when they reached the station, every single cub refused to disembark until Talia promised to visit. She still had icing in her hair.